My name's Micah. I used to lead a team of engineers at a software firm where empathy was treated like a liability. I ran clean sprints, pulled us out of technical debt 3 quarters early, and stabilized a team that had cycled through 3 managers in 1 year. None of it mattered in the end, because the one thing I couldn't suppress, my capacity to feel, was the very thing they said disqualified me from leading. Let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout-out in our next story. Today's special shout-out goes to John Barnes from London. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. It happened in a meeting that wasn't supposed to be a meeting. Just a quick sync, they said. 10 minutes, tops. I walked into conference room B with my notepad and a bottle of water, expecting roadmap chatter. Instead, Greg, the VP, was already seated, laptop closed, palms folded like a priest preparing to absolve sin. "You're one of our strongest technical leads," he started, "which always means you're about to be gutted. But leadership here requires equilibrium. When your team's under pressure, your emotional responses can escalate tension." I asked what that meant. Calmly. He smiled like it pained him to be so gracious. "There's been feedback that you care too much. About delivery. About team morale. It clouds objectivity. Passion is good. But passion without control, it can become chaos." I remember the sweat pooling in the crease of my back. Not from shame. From the restraint it took not to laugh. The last time we were under pressure, I'd stayed up 3 nights straight triaging a broken integration they pushed live without telling me. When I flagged the issue, I was told to be a team player. When I fixed it, they took credit. Now I was being told that caring was the flaw. I didn't argue. I just nodded and left. Quiet. Expressionless. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel like retreat. Just a door clicking shut. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my fire escape with a coffee I didn't drink, watching the city exhale neon and motion. My apartment smelled faintly of solder and warm plastic. The residue of prototype boards I hadn't touched in months. I'd buried my own ideas to keep that job stable, to be reliable, to be their safe bet. They didn't want a leader. They wanted a buffer. So I made a decision. No drama. No farewell speech. Just one email, timestamped 4:42 a.m. "I'm resigning effective immediately. You want machines? I build them. I'm not one of them." I signed it and never looked back. But here's the part no one saw coming. I didn't leave empty-handed. I left with 3 of the sharpest developers they had. Not because I asked, because they followed. And that was the moment I knew I wasn't too emotional to lead. I just wasn't small enough to fit inside their version of leadership. They clipped the wrong wings. You learn a lot about people when you leave without ceremony. No LinkedIn post. No company-wide goodbye. Just a name gone from Slack and an empty chair by the window that no one wanted to sit in afterward. I didn't return my laptop for 3 days. No one asked for it. Maybe they didn't want the confrontation. Or maybe they thought I'd cool off and come crawling back. That was their first mistake. What they didn't understand was that I wasn't angry. Not then. I was done. And there's a difference. I didn't tell anyone my plans. I didn't have plans. Not yet. I just knew I couldn't keep pretending that staying silent in rooms full of cowardice was a virtue. And I had this feeling. A gut-deep certainty that the real story hadn't even started yet. That same week, I got a text from Nathan, one of my back-end devs. Just 2 words. "You good?" I left him on read. Not because I was trying to be cold. I just didn't trust myself to answer honestly. 24 hours later, he sent another. "I'm not staying." That one hit different. I waited, then typed back. "You sure?" His response, "Yeah, not without you." A day after that, Zoe called. She wasn't even on my team. Front-end lead. Sharp as glass. We'd only ever spoken in code reviews and hallway banter, but she said, "Micah, I've seen what leadership should look like. And it's not Greg." Then Chris messaged me. Quiet, precise, mostly kept to himself. He just wrote, "If you're building something, I want in." By the end of the week, I had 3 of their top devs and no idea what to do with them. I wasn't trying to start a rebellion. There was no pitch deck, no seed funding. Just a shared sense that we didn't belong in a place where competence was tolerated but authenticity was punished. We started meeting in my apartment. No furniture but a second-hand whiteboard, a couple monitors on the floor, and my kitchen table stacked with ramen wrappers and USB-C cables. We didn't have a name, but we had something better in tension. I remember one night Nathan asked, "You think they even noticed we're gone?" I told him the truth. No, but they will. We weren't trying to compete. Not then. We just wanted to build without apologizing for caring, without being told that emotion was a flaw instead of a compass. Every line of code felt like a reclamation. Every sprint planning session felt like therapy in disguise. We worked quiet, obsessed, free. Meanwhile, I started getting pings from former coworkers, subtle ones. "Miss your clarity in meetings. Things feel different lately. Do you have time for a quick call?" I ignored all of them. I wasn't ready to return their gaze, not until I knew who I was outside their shadow. I wasn't healing yet, but I was gathering. I stopped shaving. I stopped checking the news. Days blurred. I only felt real when I was building. When something I touched finally worked. That's when I realized I wasn't just trying to survive anymore. I was laying bricks. And somewhere deep beneath that quiet, beneath the focus and caffeine and chaos, I felt something start to hum, low and steady. A promise. I wasn't gone. I was coming back. For the first time in a decade, my days weren't built around someone else's calendar. Number 9 a.m. check-ins. No status dashboards colored for executive optics. Just code, strategy, and silence. The kind of silence that doesn't echo, it sharpens. I'd wake up at 6, not because I had to, but because my body stopped tolerating sleep. Something in me had reawakened. Not inspiration. Not purpose. Just a low, constant pressure in the chest that felt like the beginning of something irreversible. Zoe called it early, said we needed a name. Something to rally around. I shrugged it off. Names were marketing. But she kept pushing, and one night, half drunk on bitter coffee, I wrote Emitech on the whiteboard. It was a joke, emotion plus tech. But Chris nodded. "That's the one," he said, quiet like always. "They said we're too emotional. Let's prove them right." I didn't laugh. I just stared at it for a long time. And suddenly, it wasn't a joke anymore. We ran lean. No investors. No HR. No office with glass walls and overpriced succulents. Just laptops, back-end brilliance, and a collective grudge sharp enough to slice through funding rounds we hadn't even entered yet. We launched our first product, a real-time collaboration tool with built-in burnout detection. It tracked team emotional signals through passive metrics. Erratic commit patterns, sudden drops in communication, spike delays. It didn't punish. It signaled. It protected. It was what I needed, back when no one asked if I was okay. Traction was slow until it wasn't. An indie design blog picked us up. Then a founder forum. Then a single tweet from a dev with 200K followers, built by actual humans for actual humans. Emitech's lapse. The site crashed for 6 hours. We onboard 50 teams in 2 weeks. Then 300. It snowballed. Not viral. Just steady, relentless spread. The kind that doesn't burn out because it wasn't made to impress VCs. It was made to last. With every new contract, I felt something tighten in my ribs. Not fear. Not even excitement. Just this controlled heat. Like my body knew we weren't just building software. We were proving something. Every client we landed was another crack in their glass tower. Every email that ended with, "I wish I had something like this at my last company," was a ghost calling home. The others felt it too. Nathan started documenting everything: metrics, testimonials, failure points. "We'll need this when they come sniffing around," he said. Zoe redesigned our entire UI in 48 hours because if we're going to kill giants, we should look good doing it. And Chris, quiet, surgical Chris, built a predictive engine into the back end so precise it scared even me. "If we can see their burnout coming," he said, "maybe we can stop it before it breaks them." But beneath all that progress, I was changing too. I'd stopped feeling the need to justify why I cared. I stopped flinching when I felt too much. Turns out, when you stop apologizing for being human, you can build things humans actually need. My code got cleaner. My judgment sharper. I was no longer compensating. I was leading. For real this time. Not because someone gave me permission, because I stopped asking. Then one night, while syncing user data, I recognized a domain in the logs. Their company had signed up, not under their main brand, not with the company email. Someone inside was using a personal account, trialing Imatech under the radar. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but the error pings matched their internal tools. Their fingerprints were all over it. I didn't say a word to the team. I just stared at the logs long after everyone else had signed off. It wasn't time yet, but it was close. I thought back to the last thing Greg said to me before I left. Don't take this personally, Micah. It's just business. But that was the problem. For them, it was just business. For me, it had always been something else. For me, it was the thing that almost broke me. The thing that almost convinced me that leadership meant cutting off the parts of myself that felt too much, too often, too deep. Now those parts were running a company, and they were watching. The first email came at 3:08 a.m. on a Wednesday. Subject line: Exploratory Partnership Discussion. It was from someone I didn't know, an operations manager who'd been hired after I left. The body of the message was bland, corporate, and cautious. We've been following your work with Imatech and are interested in a potential collaboration. No mention of who I was to them. No acknowledgement of the blood still drying beneath their HR rug. Just a hollow handshake. I didn't answer. Not out of pride. Because I didn't need to. If they were sending emails that early, it meant something was burning. And I wanted to let it burn just a little longer. A week later, a second message arrived. This one from Greg himself. Micah, good to see you've been doing well. We're undergoing a strategic pivot and would love your input on how Imatech might integrate with our internal processes. Let me know if you're open to a consult. No apology. No mention of emotional instability or escalated tension. Just white space where the old narrative used to live. I reread that line, undergoing a strategic pivot, and pictured the boardroom full of execs trying to figure out why their retention numbers had tanked, why teams were flatlining, why some of their best engineers had vanished and resurfaced at a company they didn't even realize they helped create. I waited 3 more days. Then I replied with one sentence. I'm open, under my terms. They called within hours. This time it wasn't Greg. It was Anna, softer, smoother, with her voice dialed to conciliatory. We've been watching Imatech grow, she said, as if that was a compliment. It's impressive. There's interest at the VP level in bringing you in to consult. Internal morale's been challenging. Challenging. That's how they framed it. Not the direct result of a culture that punished empathy and rewarded performative calm. Not the fallout of stripping leaders like me down until we either broke or disappeared. Just challenging. I gave her my rate. Triple what I made when I was salaried under them. She didn't even blink. We can do that, she said. We'll send over the paperwork today. The meeting was set for the following Tuesday. In person. At their office. I didn't tell the team until the night before. We were running late on a new feature release and Zoe was bug fixing a minor overflow issue when I finally said, I'm going back there tomorrow. Nathan looked up first. You sure you're ready? I nodded. They're the ones who aren't. I wore a black suit. Crisp. No tie. My beard was trimmed, but I didn't shave. Let the stubble show. Let them see that I'd built something while they stagnated. I walked into the same lobby where I used to badge in every morning. Only now I was being escorted by a junior admin who clearly had no idea I used to outrank half the floor. The office had changed. New paint, new furniture, new brand colors. But the air was the same. Sterile, anxious, heavy with the scent of people trying too hard to look like they're thriving. Greg met me in the glass conference room. Same room where they told me I was too emotional to lead. Same exact table. They hadn't even changed the chairs. When he offered his hand, I shook it. Firm. Silent. Let him wonder what I remembered. We got into the pitch. They wanted to use Imatech as a cultural diagnostic overlay. Code for we can't tell why our teams hate working here, and we need someone else to find out. They framed it like an opportunity. Like a mutual win. I let them talk. I asked 2 questions. I took no notes. At the end of the session, Anna smiled across the table and said, You know, Micah, this could be a full-time thing down the line. If you're open. That was the moment. That final test. The last reach from the hand that once pushed me out. I stared at her just long enough for the silence to spread across the table like a spill. I don't do full-time, I said. Consulting only. Her smile twitched. Greg cleared his throat. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked out without another word. They didn't ask me to lower my rate. They didn't ask for revisions. They signed. Later that night, I sat on the rooftop of our co-working space with Chris. He was debugging something on his tablet. I told him the deal went through. He didn't look up. Just said, "You charged them extra for the emotional tax?" I said, "No," then I smiled. I charged them for the silence. I didn't go in to punish them. I went in to show them exactly what they were missing without ever saying it out loud. That's what true leverage is. Not dominance. Not theatrics. Just being the one who knows how the whole system breaks and what it takes to keep it from collapsing. The contract gave me full access. Internal docs. Workflow logs. Team surveys. HR memos, scrubbed of names, but soaked in subtext. They handed me the very data they used to wield like a weapon, and now they were begging me to translate it. The first thing I noticed was attrition. Not the obvious kind, the quiet kind. Teams still showing up on paper, but emotionally clocked out. Productivity had tanked 18%, but their sprint cycles were still green. The metrics looked fine because their developers had learned to fake compliance. To hit their KPIs while doing the bare minimum to survive. Not out of laziness, out of learned helplessness. That's the kind of thing they never taught Greg to measure. I interviewed 6 mid-level managers. Not one of them made eye contact for more than 10 seconds. Most of them started sentences with "honestly," then stopped halfway through and rephrased. I recognized that hesitation. I used to speak with that same apology lodged in my throat. One woman, Emily, said something that stuck. She was new, bright, empathetic. The kind of person who kept snacks at her desk for the interns. "I try to shield my team," she said. "They get crushed in cross-department escalations. No one listens until something breaks." I asked her what support she had. She blinked twice. Support. There it was. By week 2, I'd already drafted my internal report. I kept the tone clinical, respectable, emotionally detached, because I knew that's what they needed to take it seriously. But between the lines, I threaded it all. The truth they didn't want to read but couldn't afford to ignore. Your company has a cultural infection. You mistake silence for alignment and apathy for efficiency. What you're calling a leadership gap is actually an emotional deficit you engineered yourselves. They'd asked for a systems audit. I gave them a mirror. I presented the findings in a room full of executives, most of whom wouldn't look at me. Greg sat at the end of the table, jaw tight. Anna kept nodding mechanically, like she was trying to generate the illusion of consensus. When I finished, no one clapped. No one spoke. I closed my laptop and said, "Any questions?" Silence. Then Greg said, "This is a lot." I didn't nod. I didn't smile. "You paid me for honesty," I said. "That's what this is." Anna glanced at Greg, then at the others. "Do you think this is reversible?" Now that was the real question, and the reason I came. I said, "Not unless you're ready to dismantle the hierarchy you built around fear and silence. That means rebuilding leadership. It means training empathy, not suppressing it. It means giving people permission to be human again." I let the weight of those words fill the room like smoke. I wanted them to feel it. Not because I wanted revenge in the way they thought I might, but because I wanted them to see the wreckage they'd called process, the damage they'd done in the name of control. I handed them the written report. Tactful, clear, unforgiving. On the last page, I attached an optional addendum, a set of cultural reforms, anonymous survey practices, psychological safety training, peer-led leadership pods. I'd priced it separately. Expensive. Greg flipped through it, his expression unreadable. "This is thorough," he muttered. "It has to be," I replied. "You're trying to rebuild trust. That doesn't happen on a deadline." After the meeting, Anna walked with me to the elevator. Her voice softened. "Micah, it's good to have you back in the building." I turned to her just before the doors closed. "I was never meant to be in this building. I only came back to show you what happens when you underestimate people who care." She didn't respond. She just nodded like she finally understood something she couldn't name. The elevator doors closed. When I stepped out onto the street, it was raining, not hard, just enough to make the pavement shine. I walked 2 blocks without opening my umbrella. I needed to feel it. The cold, the gravity, the clarity. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't done. A month after I submitted the report, Greg emailed me personally. Subject line, next steps. He thanked me for the depth of insight. Said the board had greenlit phase 1 of the reforms I recommended. Said they'd started rolling out new leadership protocols, anonymized feedback, emotional intelligence audits, cross-team listening sessions. He used words like transparency, recalibration, renewed trust. But I could hear what he didn't write. We're bleeding talent. We don't know how to stop it. We need your name on this, or it all falls apart. I read the email 3 times and didn't respond. Not because I was bitter, because I was finally free. That same night, Zoe pushed our newest product update live, a redesign built for remote-first teams with real-time sentiment analysis and optional decompression check-ins. We called it Hearth. Soft name, quiet purpose. It launched with barely a whisper, and by morning, it had been downloaded by 5,000 teams. No marketing budget. No press release. Just word of need. We were no longer just a startup. We were a compass. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was proving anything. I wasn't trying to be taken seriously. I wasn't trying to earn my seat at a table I had outgrown. I was building something that didn't require me to harden just to survive it. Zoe came by my desk late that afternoon. She tossed a folded printout on the keyboard, one of those viral future of work articles. Emitech had been listed as a top cultural disruptor. The subheading read, built by leaders who never should have been doubted. Thought you'd want to frame it, she smirked. I looked down at the headline, then folded it in half and dropped it in the bin. I don't need paper to remind me who I am. Later, alone, I opened my old corporate inbox. The company hadn't revoked access yet, which told me everything I needed to know about how broken their ops still were. I scrolled through the archive threads, performance reviews, strategy decks, HR threads labeled tone management. I found the file where Greg had once flagged me as a passion risk. I printed it, not to frame, to burn. I took it home, lit it in the sink, and watched the paper curl in on itself, blackening at the edges. It didn't feel cathartic. It didn't feel dramatic. It just felt final. That was the moment I let go. I didn't need them to collapse. I didn't need them to admit they were wrong. I didn't need applause or headlines or a redemption arc that painted me as the one who proved them all wrong. I just needed to know that I could care, deeply, inconveniently, fully, and still lead, still win, still walk away whole. A week later, I closed the consulting contract early. No press, no email blast, just a simple message. You have the tools. Use them well. I won't be back. They sent a thank you note. I didn't read it. Instead, I sat on the rooftop with my team, watching the sun drop over the skyline. No suits, no slides, just quiet people who believed in what we were building and in who we were becoming. Nathan raised his drink. To feelings, he said, mock serious. Zoe rolled her eyes. To fixing the system. Chris just said, to leaders who feel and still know how to finish. I lifted mine last. Let the silence sit there for just a second longer than it needed to. To the ones they underestimated, I said, may we never become them. If this story hits something in you, if you've ever been told to shrink, to stay quiet, or to feel less just to fit in, then you already know how powerful it is to reclaim your voice. Subscribe for more stories like this, where quiet revenge becomes personal freedom and underestimated becomes unforgettable.